Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Well, hey, everybody. It's Monday, October 12th. This is episode 115 of the Standing Brothers Show. This is the only show that you'll get this week because Jacob and I will be out of town, and as you probably noticed, it is a day late because of external forces of extraterrestrial nature. We were unable to continue or to provide another installment of this here program yesterday, but we is back, ready for the news, ready for a breakdown of everything. Jacob's not feeling 100%, so you may not hear him talk as much, which is fine. But Jacob, what's going on? How's your week biz?
It's been good. It's been busy. We're hanging in there.
We're hanging on by a thread, as some people would like to say. Well, I don't know if anybody has noticed, unless you, I don't know, are trying to get on an airplane in Florida, that Southwest has been having some problems as far as fulfilling, getting planes off the ground. Initially, they had said it was due to the weather, or it was because of problems with scheduling and whatnot. But it seems like that was the only airline that was affected by bad weather over the weekend. Now, of course, they're saying they're getting back to normal now. But it is interesting that the same week that their Turning Point USA releases a video about how an airline pilot was being forced to choose his career as a pilot or getting the vaccine. And you're seeing this too with NBA stars, which we'll get to in a minute, because I have a hot take on Michael Jordan that is probably not going to be popular, but it's the truth, and we all know it. But anyway, so the Southwest Airlines, which is based out of Texas, which will be important also in a minute, has had problems fulfilling airplane rides. I guess it's not an amusement thing, but flights. There you go. Because, as they said, over the weather concerns. Now, if you look at the Doppler radar from when these cancellations took place, clear skies. And it's interesting, none of the other airlines that were flying out of these areas were impacted by the weather at all. Like Delta didn't say anything, United, even Spirit or Frontier, the gutter trash of airline travel, had nothing to say. Even they could get their rinky-dink planes off the ground. But it was Southwest that had problems. Now, is it because of the Biden's vaccine mandate or Southwest Airlines vaccine mandate? Well, now there's an interesting scenario. There have been a lot of rumors that these people have been walking off the job, or they had just said, enough's enough. I am not going to choose my career over being forced to get the medical procedure that I choose not to go under. There's also a lot of airline pilots and teachers and whatnot in Australia faced with the same situation. Very famously, there was an airline pilot who I think was 30 years experience, I think, who had said that he loves flying, but his personal choice and freedom is more important than his career, which that's a pretty bold stand to take, and it's the right one to take. But the problem is that there's a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily take that stand because well, I gotta feed the kids. Well, what happens when you're forced to do what's the next step? What you're forced to do this now? I gotta fall in line. Well, the next step. Well, I gotta fall in line.
Some people unfortunately don't have the option to say no due to circumstances. It's either they do this so their family's out in the street, so it's not always fair.
But what happens when the next step is worse?
I'm saying that if it chooses between the well-being of your children and of your family, I will not condemn somebody for falling in line.
But
I just won't.
But let's say you have a group of a couple thousand of you, because there were some 6,000 people that didn't report to work over the weekend.
I understand that, but when it's not a guarantee that it's going to be changed, it's not.
Okay, then where do you draw the line?
That's for the individual to decide, but it would be irrational to put the lives of others into jeopardy just based on your personal
But if you
situation.
if you don't hold the line now,
I'm not saying that. I'm
guaranteeing
just saying,
in the future, because we know how these things go.
I'm just saying that there is a difference between the two.
But
that's all I'm going to say.
I get that point of view, but if you don't stand up and say, enough's enough, the line stops here. If famous people who are coming out against the vaccine mandate, like there was one basketball star that said he was forced to get it. Well, sure, you may be forced to get it if you want to play basketball, but no one was necessarily holding you down, forcing that thing into your arm. He has the wherewithal and the means to not get it. Would it ruin his life not to play another game of basketball ever again? Probably not, but he's got enough money to say no. So I don't necessarily think that I buy the line from the FAA or Southwest CEO saying, well, it was staffing issues. Well, everybody's understaffed, so no. Or it was the weather. Well, we've looked at the Doppler radar, and we all can see that the problem wasn't necessarily the weather, because you were the only airline that seemed to have problems with the weather. So unless all Southwest planes all fell into some mechanical problems where they all couldn't get off the ground, then maybe. But I think it is interesting, and I was listening to a lot of people talk about this, and they're hearing rumors from the airline, the union for pilots has said that they think that the spokesperson for the SWAPA, which is the Southwest Airline Pilots Association, was trying to block the vaccine requirements because they feel that it violates the rights of the Railroad Labor Act, which regulates the relationship between airlines and unions. And they're basically what they're saying. They're not anti-vaccine, but we do believe under all circumstances it is our role to play to represent the health and safety of our pilots and bring their concerns to the company. So they're basically saying, you know what, we're against the mandate, and I think a lot of people are like, we're against the mandate too. So they're like, well, maybe if we just walk off a job or we all just call in sick, maybe they'll get the message. So I think that's kind of the reason why there was a lot of cancellations. Now, here is the development in the story that I think is. I don't know, that I think is very telling. So Governor Abbott bars vaccine mandates in Texas. So for any restaurant, for any business, they cannot require employees or patrons of that business to be vaccinated in order to conduct business in the state of Texas. I think there's like $1,000 fine per instance, whenever this happens. So, and that is directly in opposition to the federal mandate when it comes to Joe Biden's 100 or more employees you have to get everybody vaccinated. Now, here is where I think you're going to see more of what's been happening over the last weekend in the future. The Southwest CEO says that Southwest Airlines, they will defy Texas governor's order banning vaccine mandates. So the Texas-based companies Southwest Airlines and American Airlines both said Tuesday that they will keep in place COVID-19 vaccine requirements for all their employees, defying an order from Governor Abbott banning all vaccine mandates, including for private businesses. So the airlines had already placed a requirement, I think by December 8th, that the company had decided that they wanted all their employees to be vaccinated by that date, and I forget the date for the federal mandate. Because since the airlines fall under as federal employees, because it's basically the ultimate crony capitalist fascistic mold that is the airlines and the FFA and all that nastiness. They're basically all federal employees, so they're going to have to follow. Supposedly, they'll have to follow the federal mandate. But if the CEO is saying, in the state of Texas, is saying that, hey, we're going to defy the governor's order because we believe that the federal law is supreme. Not so fast. You operate within the state of Texas. Now, the state of Texas has every right to say, well, we believe that the federal law is unconstitutional. Therefore, we're going to nullify it, which is effectively what Abbott's trying to do. So you operate within the state of Texas, which is the law of the land in Texas, because the Texas government, kind of governs the state of Texas. That's usually how these things work. Wouldn't you say so, Jacob?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens when the CEO of your own company says, doesn't matter, I don't care what your situation is, I don't care what Abbott says, we're following Biden, screw you, get in line. Are you just going to fall over and bend over and take it? Or are you going to walk off the job and say, you know what, I'm going to take one for the team here, folks. So if you're against the vaccine mandates, then maybe you should take a stand and say no. And I know it's an impossible situation for everybody. I know everyone has circumstances that are impossible to work around. But at some point, somebody's got to say no. At some point, that's got to happen. Someone's got to say no at some point. And there is someone that I tend to have that I had no idea that existed. I had no idea who this person was until today. It was the Nets' Kyrie Irving. I'm guessing he's a basketball guy. I don't know. I don't watch basketball. Don't particularly like basketball. He said he will. The Nets are saying, the general manager of the Nets are saying that he will not be allowed to play or practice with the team until he's fully vaccinated against the germ. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem, per se, of companies saying, if you want to play on our team, you got to follow these guidelines. You can't say this in the media. You can't do this, off the court. I'm fine with those kinds of things. But when it comes to medical stuff, that's a whole different issue. If a company was requiring you, let's say you worked for MyPillow. Let's say you work for Mike Lindell, right? And he was saying that you have to get a Trump 2024 tattoo on your forehead. Everyone would say no to that. Even the left would say no to that. That's crazy. Well, I mean, this is kind of the same thing. You should not be forced to get the jab in order to do your job. Like all the nurses who are saying we don't want to get it because they've dealt with it firsthand and they probably all have natural immunity to it. But in order to play basketball, you have to get the jab? I don't think so. So what they're saying is that he'll not be allowed to play or practice with the team until he's fully vaccinated. Okay, we got that. This is what they said from the general manager, Sean Marks. That's interesting. Given the evolving nature of the situation and through deliberation, we have decided Kyrie Irving will not play or practice with the team until he is eligible to be a participant. Kyrie has made a personal choice, and we respect his individual right to choose. No, you don't. No, you do not. See, if you really respected his right to choose, you would say, you know what, we stand by, that's his decision he has made. And no further comments on that. That's what he has decided to do, and that's that. Currently, the choice restricts him. Currently, the choice restricts his ability to be a full-time member of the team, and we will not permit any other member of our team to participate with part-time availability. Now, of course, they're all saying, well, this is about public health. This is about safety. This is about the science. Well, as we have pointed out in the last episode we were together, and as Dr. Fauci has so eloquently said himself, that the vaccine doesn't prevent the spread of COVID-19. And even in the NBA rules, if you're fully vaccinated, you will not be subject to daily testing. So then you're not protecting anybody. But if you're unvaccinated, you got to go through daily testing. You have to follow the mandatory mask policy. Well, it seems like even if you are unvaccinated, there's a higher chance of you being protected from the thing because of daily testing than your fellow fully vaccinated members of the team. This doesn't make any sense. It has nothing to do with public health. It has nothing to do with the science. It has everything to do with compliance. Why? Because if they can get all the good-looking rich white people and all the good-looking rich black people to go along with their forced medical procedures, then the rest of us plebs will fall in line because, hey, look, Kyrie Irving got it. Look over there. The whole U.S. women's soccer team got it all together. Joe Biden's getting his booster shot on the soundstage outside the White House. All the influencers are getting on TikTok, so that means we have to get it. But then anytime someone says, no, I don't want to get it, oh, well, you're going to be dehumanized. I haven't really looked to see what people are saying about this, about Kyrie Irving. But I know there's a lot of people in our movement, in our side of the world, who, even though his politics are probably not anywhere aligned with ours, but I respect your right to choose not to be forced to be vaccinated. Like, all the airline pilots that were basically the hands and feet of the state when it comes to enforcing the mask policies and whatnot on airlines, all the evil little tyrants that they turned into, I still respect your right not to be forced to take the vaccine, either by your company's edict or by the state. Even though you were probably a jerk to so many people when you were walking around the plane with your 3 masks on, complaining about how a 2-year-old wasn't wearing theirs, I still respect your right not to be forcibly vaccinated. But the problem is that doesn't go the other way around. When someone like me or like Jacob or people who I don't even know say, you know what, maybe I just don't want to get it right now. Maybe we haven't done enough long-term testing. Maybe the fact that the efficacy rate in Israel and other countries is dropping. Maybe because in other countries like Australia, I don't want to be Australia. I don't want to be locked inside of some hotel for weeks on end because I didn't get the shot or because I tested positive, even though I feel fine and I'm not contagious. Maybe people don't want to be that. I don't know. And then what kind of really, I guess, kind of pissed me off, really, is what Michael Jordan had to say about this whole situation. I don't know if you saw this, Jacob.
I did not.
Headline from Yahoo Entertainment. So you know this is the truth here. Michael Jordan praises NBA's handling of COVID-19 protocol, says he's a believer in science. The pro athlete is a believer in science, Jacob. So the NBA legend expressed his support for the NBA's COVID-19 vaccine protocols after a number of players, most notably the Brooklyn Nets' Kyrie Irving, said he wouldn't get. During an interview with Today to talk about Bubba Watson, and because Michael Jordan's so rich, he owns a NASCAR team. He also owns, I guess he owns a basketball team somewhere, I'm sure. I am in total unison with the league, the 58-year-old Jordan said. And I think everybody has been speaking about the vaccinations, and I'm a firm believer in science, and I'm going to stick with that, and hopefully everybody abides whatever the league sets the rules. I think once everybody buys in, we're going to be fine. Wouldn't this be a perfect opportunity for someone like Michael Jordan? You don't get any more popular than Michael Jordan, especially in the basketball arena, right? There's no one more popular than Michael Jordan. Maybe LeBron James, but even there, I don't know, right? You got all kinds of people wearing his shoes. I think his shoes are kind of ugly because I don't particularly like those kinds of shoes, but whatever. So Michael Jordan says, you know what? Instead of tarnishing my good image by taking an actual stance on something, I'm just going to toe the line. Again, as we've said, it's got nothing to do with science. Right? As I can guarantee Michael Jordan probably hasn't looked into it that much. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't. But if you're going to vaccine advice from Michael Jordan, your world is turned upside down. So instead of tarnishing his good image and saying, you know what, I respect that man's decision not to be forcibly vaccinated, because if he does, he won't be able to play again. Instead of doing that, instead of getting behind one of his fellow members of the NBA, saying, you know what, I respect your decision not to, and I think what the league is doing is flat out wrong. He's just going to be another cog in the machine. So if you're looking to Michael Jordan to take a firm stance on anything, look somewhere else. Because, once you start making all that money, right? I remember I watched The Last Dance, and in that documentary, there's many times when Michael Jordan would say, you know what, I want the money in your pocket, I don't really care how else I get it, right? There are so many stories of where Michael Jordan would rig, competitions and like gambling stuff, so he would win. Even though he may have only won $100, he's like, you've got money and I want it. He strikes me as a guy that will get to the top and get rich no matter what it takes, no matter who he has to run over in order to get it. So screw Michael Jordan. I want nothing to do with the guy. I've lost any respect that I had for him. And I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of people who won't say, Even if you don't do something, but just say something. Say it's wrong. Say, you know what? I respect your decision for anything. It could be anything, right? I don't agree necessarily with what you're doing, but you know what? I don't hate you for it. I'm not gonna blast you in the media for it. So I'm sick of all this. I have never liked the NBA. I've never liked basketball. I have never liked the culture around basketball. I think a lot of it is just stupid. But you don't really see this in baseball or even the NFL. Hockey has got its own problems. But I can't take this anymore. To me, basketball is a garbage sport because of this. Because your most famous player is saying, you know what? Well, if the NBA says that's the rule, well, then I'm just going to automatically agree. And once everybody kind of just buys into it, I think we'll all be all right. Yeah, what a loser. What man says that, you know what? Well, I'm just gonna stick my finger in the wind and see which way the wind's blowing. Sounds like a politician to me. What do you think, Jacob?
No, there's no disagreements for me, really.
I don't know. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm being a little harsh. But when someone who could make a stance, when you have someone that is trying to make a stance against forcible getting, either getting forced to take the jab or not play, you think, you know what? Maybe this is a chance where someone could actually do something good for once in a while. But I guess Michael Jordan's got too much money to make. The potential loss that he could see from coming out against the league and the what the owners of the Nets have decided is far too outweighs the potential gain that he could see. But that's who Michael Jordan is, right? He will do whatever it takes to win. He will do whatever it takes to make another dollar. Principles, morals, be damned. Doesn't matter to him as long as I keep making that money. Because, the cigars he smokes are really expensive. Someone's got to pay to pay all his maids for his house. Someone's got to be able to pay for all those cars he owns. So I guess it's worth it for him. I guess it's more important for him to keep his image than to really do anything important. Oh, but Joey gives to charity. Yeah, whatever. Lots of people give to charity. But if you've got a moment here where you could do something that could benefit the world, yeah, whatever. So I guess you're just gonna throw Kyrie Irving under the bus. Yeah. What an ambassador for the sport you are, and for whatever. I don't know. So did you see the the record the quits that have been going around, Jacob?
The what? I'm sorry.
So in August there was a record 4.3 million workers who quit their jobs.
I did not see that. No.
So what I don't understand is, right, so you have 10 million people 10 million jobs unfulfilled in the marketplace. And yet the unemployment rate seems to keep dropping. That doesn't make any sense. So originally there were like 11.1 million unfulfilled jobs. Then it was revised, and now it's somewhere like around 10.4 million jobs. Or no, I'm sorry, it's 10.96 million. So basically 11 million jobs are unfulfilled. And I don't understand how the unemployment rate seems to keep dropping. Maybe because they're not going to count these people who are unemployed, who have decided to walk off a job. And that kind of goes with the president's approval ratings. So right now, according to Real Clear Politics, the approval rating is 43% to the 52% who disapprove. And that's across many different backgrounds and people. So that's a 9.3 spread. So you've got the soaring inflation. You've got millions of people who are just walking off a job, especially in retail and in food service production areas. You've got the shipping problem. You've got the problem at the border. You've got the problem with the spending bills. You've got the problems with increasing tensions, as we'll see, with China and Taiwan. You got the what else is there? I mean, you name it and claim it. There's all kinds of things going wrong. And this is the result of what happens when you vote against something. You don't necessarily vote for something. You just say, we don't want the orange man. Let's just vote for Biden no matter what. And as you're seeing, there's a lot of people who are saying, you know what, maybe that was a really bad idea. I'm not saying that Trump was perfect, that he did everything right. I think we've done a pretty good job criticizing him. We don't have to get back into that. But things on the outside, if you were to just to read the dust jacket cover of a book, things looked like they were better, right? Jim Cramer said in 2019 that we had the best economic numbers of our lives. Now, Jacob and I picked apart that statement by Cramer pretty harshly, and we are no fans of the every time that anyone would say that the economy was doing so well, because the problems we faced back then, we still face now. It's just gotten worse. But everything seemed like it was working. Everything seemed like it was better. But as Jacob and I have said numerous times, that this kind of stuff was going to happen no matter who was president. It was just a matter of time. But for most people who don't look into these things, who don't pay attention, who don't know all the background, they'll very easily be persuaded to believe one thing over another. So if you were just to go out and tell people, like if the Trump people were to go out and tell people, hey, when I was president, we didn't have all these problems. You wouldn't see the economic collapse. You wouldn't see the inflation. Well, yeah, you kind of would. It may not be to this level, but you still would have seen it at some point, right? Because before Biden became president, there was massive amounts of spending, massive amounts of monetary creation before Biden was president, and this was pre-COVID, and even during COVID, right? Trump was so wrong on his response to COVID. The fact that he didn't fire Fauci, the fact that he went with the Defense Production Act to make all those ventilators that were not needed to actually end up killing people, yeah, that was bad. When he signed all those emergency orders into law, giving governors the cover of darkness to go ahead and do all these lockdowns and stuff, yeah, that was wrong. That was bad. That led to the problems. But when you vote for someone just because they're not that, just because, oh, he's racist or whatever, this is what you get. You get a system that is collapsing, that it looks like it's collapsing. I don't want to use those terms and phrases. I don't want to scare anybody, but I don't want to be the ringer of death either. But it certainly looks like things are starting to unravel. You know, you got the inflation problem that no one seems to know what to do with, that most people will deny is even happening. You got the problems with the Southwest Airlines. Everyone's just like, oh, well, they said it was the weather, so I'll just believe that. No, there's probably problems with people who are saying, you know what, I will not be forced to get this jab, so I'm walking off the job, or I'm deciding not to come into work today. That's a very real scenario that could happen. So when you vote for someone who's just not the other guy, well, I mean, this is what things certainly seem to look like, or this is the outcome of that. Now, there's a major surge in support from people who live in more rural areas for Trump, because they say, well, this is what we were told we were going to get with Biden. But I don't necessarily believe that if you were to just reinstall Trump as president, that everything would go back to normal, everything would look better. So I don't necessarily believe that if Trump were president today, everything would be better. I don't necessarily believe that, because, you know, Trump did not get rid of the swamp. He didn't drain the swamp. In fact, it got worse. Like, everyone talks about how Trump was trying to end Afghanistan. Well, no, he really didn't. He did a new surge into Afghanistan. He dropped more bombs in 4 years than 8 years prior. So he really wasn't trying to end that war. He didn't really end any wars. He didn't start any new ones, which is great. But nothing fundamentally changed, so to speak. But I guess that's what you get. I don't know. So let's see what else. What do you think about that, Jacob?
I mean, I don't have any disagreements, anything else really to add. I think he did a good job kind of summing it up.
Okay. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? We did that. All right, so I want to spend a little time on this, because I think this needs to be thoroughly, I don't want to say debunked, but thoroughly addressed. Because there is a lot of talk, a lot of news spinning around about China and Taiwan. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but there's some new information coming out, new things that are happening that has a lot of people scared. So I guess within the last several weeks, supposedly China has been flying either commercial airline flights or military flights have been going into so-called Taiwan airspace. Now, every country has a certain determined amount of land outside their own land mass that is declared their air zones, right? So I think it's like 12 miles out off of the coast of the United States. That is our supposed, the bubble around our airspace that no one's allowed to enter into without permission. Every country has this. Even ships out on the battlefield have this bubble around them that if you pass within this certain determined space, that's like an act of war, which is interesting to think about. So this has been happening in Taiwan, and we're gonna get to why it's kind of stupid in a second. But that's kind of what's been going on. So this is from Responsible Statecraft, written by Daniel Larison, who is great. So the headline says, "Let's talk about those Chinese incursions into Taiwan's air defense zone." So nothing could be turn an imaginary crisis into a real one faster than a fear-mongering media and explicit U.S. pledge to defend Taiwan. So dozens of Chinese military flights through parts of Taiwan's air defense identification zone, which is that bubble around countries like we talked about, over the past month have caused an unwarranted panic that hawks in the U.S. have stoked and exploited for their own purposes. Media hysteria and misinformation about these events have served to ratchet up tensions unnecessarily and to create an impression with the public that China is behaving far more aggressively than it is. The eagerness with some national security analysis and reports have mischaracterized what these flights represent have been alarming because it shows how quickly any Chinese action can be used to create a crisis atmosphere when there is no reason for it. As U.S.-Chinese tensions increase due to mutual suspicion and distrust, these false claims will likely become more frequent and potentially much more dangerous if the U.S. is to keep these tensions from spiraling out of control. It should not take away any provocative actions that could trigger a real crisis. So, contrary to many sensationalist reports and social media posts, Chinese forces have not violated Taiwanese airspace, nor have they flown over Taiwan, which is what people are saying. And he gives several links to Twitter posts and media headlines stating this. So there was one from, let me see if I can get it to come up now. Oh yeah, from, where is it? Kevin Barron is the Tweety post, or the Tweety guy, who is saying that this guy supposedly works for a defense research paper, a research group. So this is what his Twitter post was. So China sends 52 warplanes over Taiwan. Xi is seriously poking at Biden and testing the United States response. Putin walked into Ukraine because the West wasn't going to fight for it. Will Xi be allowed to do the same? Now, what's interesting is you can clearly see the air defense zone around Taiwan. The air defense zone goes into mainland China, right? It extends beyond their borders into another countries. Let's get back to the article. So, Chinese forces have not violated Taiwanese airspace, nor have they flown over Taiwan. In fact, these Chinese flights have mostly taken place in one corner of the southwest Taiwanese ADIZ, hundreds of miles away from the island. They have all been operating in international airspace. Whether through sloppiness or desire through clicks, media outlets and analysts that should know better have effectively misled their audiences into thinking that China has been routinely committing acts of aggression against Taiwan when it has not done that. Kevin Barron, the executive editor of Defense One magazine that claims that flights had gone over Taiwan, compare that to the Russian military intervention in Ukraine, and then suggest that the Chinese government was testing the United States and preparing to do something similar there. Again, like I just read that tweet from Kevin, or his name is Kevin, right? Yeah. And then you have CBS News that Taiwan is very concerned that China is going to launch a war to take over, the foreign minister says. And then from U.S. News, brazen China steadily ramps up warplane flights into Taiwanese airspace. Again, like I said, the ADIZ zone extends into mainland China, and these flights were going over the smallest corner of that zone. So they weren't flying over the mainland, because that would be troubling. But they weren't anywhere close to the island. The ADIZ is in a defined area well beyond a country's airspace that airspace extends only 12 miles out from the coasts. Several countries, including the United States and China, have established ADIZs to provide them with advance warning of approaching aircraft, and other governments send their own planes to these zones without notifying the other side on a semi-regular basis. The U.S. has repeatedly sent bombers to the ADIZ that China established over the Far East China Sea in 2013. And Russia sometimes sends its planes over the American ADIZ around Alaska. Part of Taiwan's ADIZ even overlaps with a portion of Chinese mainland itself. As Michael Swain observed earlier this week, the unprecedented number of flights is genuine cause for concern, but it's not a cause for alarmist reaction that we have been seeing. So why is China sending so many planes to the Taiwanese ADIZ? As Bonnie Glacier told the Guardian this week, the Chinese are using these flights increasingly for training purposes. This is actually the end of the typical annual training cycle. The other purpose is to serve it is to signal to the U.S. that Taiwan not to cross Chinese red lines, and stress Taiwanese Air Force to force them to scramble to stress the aircraft and pilots of the force, and to do more maintenance and test the response to Taiwanese air defense system. So this has been going on for a while now. The China and the U.S. and Taiwan do all kinds of training exercises. Like, we have so many naval ships around Taiwan and in the South China Sea because we think we own it, doing all these kinds of training exercises. This is nothing new. This has been going on for a long time now. We used to do the same thing in North Korea until Trump most bravely or heroically decided to stop doing that. They used to do all kinds of military exercises where they would send off live ordnances and live rounds and bombs and explode them just outside of these zones to show a strength of force, to say, hey, we're here, don't mess with us. Now, that could be taken one of two ways. Hey, they're just out there having fun, or they're trying to provoke something, or they're trying to let us know that we're there. So I think it's probably the latter. These flights are annoying, and they do some strain on Taiwanese Air Force, but we should not exaggerate the danger they pose to the island. The worst thing that Washington could do is overreact and take its own provocative actions in response. Threat inflation is given as the U.S. foreign policy debates, but it has been remarkable to see once again how easily media coverage can turn into a full-blown fear-mongering at the drop of a hat. Much of the coverage of the story in the last week has been given very poor and inflammatory, and in some cases the commentary has been completely inappropriate. It is disturbing to think how a real crisis in the Taiwan Strait could be covered. It is worth asking whether our media outlets are even capable of responsibly reporting such an issue. And this has been so true as far as the COVID stuff as well. And even so-called terror attacks or school shootings, right? You know, a school shooting happens, which is tragic. But one side of the media will completely blow it up into this thing that doesn't really need to be. Or with COVID, one side thinks that the world is literally ending, where one side thinks, well, we can go back to normal now. Right? Same thing with the Taiwan and Chinese, right? We have this stupid thing where we have to defend the Taiwanese, or we think that we are the policemen of the South China Sea. I'm sorry, but the South China Sea is on the other side of the world. We have no jurisdiction there. Now, if the Taiwanese ask us for advice, that's fine. We give some advice, but there's nothing for us to do there. As Swain noted, formulaic representation by Washington and its continued adherence to the One China policy and Beijing's continual verbal support for a peaceful solution to the problem will not put a halt to this dangerous dynamic either. So, earlier this week, there was a big announcement that China was very open to an idea of where for peace. Now, I don't necessarily believe that, But China is saying all the things that would seem like that they want peace, that they want to bring Taiwan back into the fold. Now, the Taiwanese, on the other hand, did the complete opposite. They we want nothing to do with the Chinese. Which, again, okay, fine, whatever. But it does seem like, from what people are saying, from what the two countries are saying, that China is trying to take the less hawkish approach versus the Taiwanese and the U.S. Not saying I support the Chinese. I don't support them invading the island or retaking it over. I don't support any of that. But just from the words that are being printed, the words that are being said, that's the way it certainly looks. Where is doing here? The constant agitation in Washington for more aggressive anti-Chinese posture in the region undermines Biden's affirmations of the status quo. Recent arguments for giving Taiwan an explicit security guarantee have only contributed to the problem further. Nothing could turn an imaginary crisis into a real one faster than an explicit U.S. pledge to defend Taiwan. Not only would this be an abrupt break in the status quo that has kept peace for 4 decades, but a policy and strategic clarity would represent a direct challenge to China over a matter of vital importance to the Chinese government could not ignore. An American pledge to defend Taiwan would only be tested early on, and it's doubtful that anyone in our government has fully thought through the implications of such a commitment would require. The public is wholly unprepared for a conflict over Taiwan when involved in what it might end up costing the United States. So, we have this stupid agreement with them. Remember, unentangling alliances, how we weren't supposed to do those. So, if for whatever reason China decides, well, we're going to bring them back into the mainland, we would get involved. The United States would get involved over a dispute with Taiwan and China. Now, people say there's all kinds of strategic things with Taiwan, as far as like the chip conductors and whatnot. There might be some truth to that, but sorry, that's not our problem. That is not the problem of the United States, right? We saw the whole catastrophe that was Afghanistan. Remember that whole thing? We want to do this again? We want to get involved in another conflict that we have no business getting involved in? So, do I sympathize with the people being of Taiwan potentially being invaded by the Chinese? Yeah, I don't think that's a particularly groovy thing to happen. But we cannot further extend ourselves than we already have. And I really don't think that China is going to do it. I really don't. Because if they do, not only does the U.S. get involved, but Japan gets involved, Korea gets involved, other countries in that region will get involved. So what good is that really going to do them? And if they really wanted to stick it to the United States, there are many other ways that China could stick it, if you will, to the United States versus getting involved with Taiwan. So decades of waging war against much weaker states and terrorist groups have helped Americans forget how dangerous it is to court unnecessary conflict. As Daniel Davis recently pointed out, the very best outcome we can hope for is for a U.S. military that's left severely damaged, thousands of service members killed and wounded, and a massive security and financial blunder of defending Taiwan indefinitely. And that is the best case scenario. That is not the most likely outcome. An explicit security guarantee to Taiwan would put the U.S. on a path for war with China sooner or later. There's a good chance of this war we would lose. So, if we were to get involved in a situation where we had to actually defend Taiwan, it's going to be Afghanistan all over again. Is that what we really want? So for all of those of you who are saying, well, we have to defend Taiwan, fine. Then you can go over to Taiwan and defend it. You can be financially responsible for that. You shouldn't have access to my tax dollars. You should be responsible for writing a personal check to the U.S. government to defend Taiwan if you think it's so important. It's the same thing with all the neocons and wanting to stay in Afghanistan and Iraq and in the rest of the Middle East, right? If you think it's so important, then you go and do it. You put your own money up and do it if you think it's so important. Because if you are not willing to at least do that, then it's really not that important to you. The United States can and should continue assisting Taiwan to prepare its own defenses to discourage China from ever making an attempt to seize the island by force. But it should not make an explicit guarantee to go to war with China with Taiwan on its behalf. Making such a guarantee is more likely to trigger a crisis in a war than is to prevent one. The best thing to be done under these circumstances is to seek reduced tension with China and to back away from the militarized rivalry with them that our own government has been pursuing. Unfortunately, the irresponsible hawkish fear-mongering over the week's events threatened to move the U.S. into the opposite direction. So I've been saying this for I don't know how long now, that we got to stop the Cold War with China before it gets hot. That it does us no good to be in this Cold War with China. Now, if you listen to people like Steve Bannon and say, well, this is the fight of our lifetime, we have to do this. Why? Why do we have to do this? Why is this so important? It sounds to me like this is the old Cold Warrior, line of thinking about what the USSR, right? They all said about how the USSR was going to invade and how they were superior to us and how all their politicians were forward-thinking and how they were so much smarter than us. And these are the same people, mind you, that were warning about us, about the USSR, that said command and control and central planning doesn't work. Right? So somehow they figured out some kind of new math where socialism and communism works and is going to take over the world, while at the same time it doesn't work. So this is the same thing with China, right? The CCP, the Communist the political party in China, right? They'll all say that, well, communism and socialism and top-down control and central planning doesn't work. But somehow they figured out how to do it in China, so they're the threat to our world today. Well, let's go back, 30 years ago and see that the fall of the Berlin Wall proved, and Ronald Reagan proved, that communism and socialism doesn't work. You know all we had to do was wait it out. So here's the best defense against China. Out freedom China. Because if we know that free markets and free minds and freedom and capitalism works, if we know that freedom works, then let's make ourselves more free. Let's not waste all this money on militarism. Let's not waste all this money just shoving it into the black hole that is the Pentagon. Let's not waste all this time and energy in getting people all scared through the media about how dangerous this situation is, supposedly how dangerous it is. Let's actually, you know what? Let's do the opposite of that. Doesn't that sound good? That sounds good to me. What do you think, Jacob?
Let's pull a George Costanza and do the opposite.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of every guy you've ever met.
That's right. Opposite of every country you've ever met.
That's right. So that's where Tim Pool and Steve Bannon and all those people lose me. Is that they say, well, for decades we've been at war with China. And I'm just like, please, can we just stop this, right? When you start talking this way, you're no better than the Bill Kristols of the world, who say we're in a religious war, we're in a fight against radical Islam. Well, there's some like 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. Are we at war with all of them? Or is it just a small handful, or what was a small handful of them that ran those planes into the World Trade Center? Maybe that was the real problem. It was just like 400 guys is the extent of what the problem was before 9/11. And now they're everywhere because you decided to fight this ridiculous world war on terrorism, right? So they said we got to occupy Afghanistan to stop world terrorism. Well, it can happen anywhere. Like we've said before, the attacks on 9/11 were planned in Germany. They were planned in Egypt. They got training in South Florida on how to fly airplanes. So how does occupying a country stop that? It doesn't. So stop with the nonsense that is the fear mongering. Stop with the nonsense that is this Cold War with China. I'm so sick and tired of hearing this. And as far as the intellectual property and the trade stuff goes, that to me that's very simple. Out freedom China. You know, I don't think tariffs and trade barriers and all that stuff. Those are terrible ideas. That is really it creates monopoly. And that creates corporations as special interests to the government, which kind of sounds like central planning. That is that the government will pick winners and losers over others as far as who needs to be protected from China. As far as intellectual property stuff, I mean, everybody engages in intellectual property theft. To say that it's only the Chinese or that they are the worst offenders of it, again, is ridiculous. And I am not a firm believer in intellectual property either. I think a lot of that has to do with creating monopoly and creating its government granted monopoly in a lot of ways. So I'm not really fond of that either. So this is a problem that doesn't need to be a problem. And if we continue on this path, it's very possible that people will actually get what they want. And they want to go after China militarily because of all the problems, supposedly, that they're causing. So, I don't know. What do you think, Jacob?
Yeah, I largely agree with what you said. It's just continuation of the failed U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah. I did have something else that I wanted to touch on. I don't know if I have it on my phone or not. Oh, yeah. We got time? Yeah, we got time. Let's go quickly. Our favorite former Fed chairwoman, Janet Yellen, has been in the news recently as far as over uncollected tax dollars that she thinks is hiding somewhere out there in people's bank accounts. So what she wants to do at the Treasury Department, as the former Fed president says, the department's proposal to make banks report all financial transactions over $600 is a violation of they want to any transactions over $600 they want banks to report on that. That could be a potentially big invasion into privacy, wouldn't you think? Yeah, I would too. So it's a massive search without a warrant, because what's the justification for this? Well, there isn't one. It's, we think that we are owed money, right? So, as she said, there's an enormous tax gap in the U.S. estimated at $7 trillion over the next 10 years in terms of shortfall on tax collections that we believe we are owed. It comes from places where the information on income is opaque and can be hidden. Well, I wonder why people tend to hide their information. Maybe because they don't want to pay taxes. I don't think that's such a radical thing to not want to do. So the arrogance of this woman to say, well, we are owed. Who are you to say we are owed? You're the Treasury Department. You're not the IRS. Now, they probably work hand in hand. But furthermore, ma'am, if I don't want you to have my money, you have no right to it. And the idea that you're going to go around and snooping into other people's bank accounts to see if they've been making transactions over a certain amount of money is a huge invasion of privacy. Furthermore, the cost that's going to place on banks to collect all this information and to put it into formats where the banks can, or where the IRS can actually read it, because we know the IRS is so great at collecting information and reading it, it just seems like a lot of uneconomic work that has to be done. All the man hours that are going to be spent on doing this isn't going to help the economy, isn't going to help banks. And furthermore, the invasion of your privacy. How could anyone be okay with this? If let's say if you did your banking through, I don't know, a private corporation, right? Let's say you went to the Walmart of banks and they wanted to snoop into your accounts to see what you were spending your money on. Everyone would say no. Everyone would say this is the corporation trying to invade my privacy. It's No different when the IRS or the Treasury Department wants to do it. No different. But yeah, and if they're gonna do this, they really need a search warrant. And again, the Patriot Act was the first step in this, right? Because it was if $5,000 or more, they had to send out a report. Now it's $600 or more. So how much longer until it's $500 or $250? How much until they want to see every transaction you make? Because, terrorism, because our people aren't paying enough taxes. How long until it's groups that are against the vaccine mandate? Who knows? I don't. But anyway, got anything else, Jacob?
Not particularly, no.
Okay.
No.
All right, well, that is it for us. We'll be back on next Monday with a full recap of our weekend at the Tom Woods 2000th event. Woo. It's going to be a smash hit. It's going to be a great time. I am so looking forward to this weekend, to getting away from it all and enjoying that. Also, tonight is the season premiere, I guess, of hockey. So that's going to be great. The Lightning game comes on in about an hour, which I will be watching tonight and enjoying. But until then, folks, please do something fun. Go out, enjoy yourselves. Have a great weekend. We will see you all next week. Peace.
Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.